Well, the fate of the Golden State Warriors for this upcoming season, besides the obvious, besides Stephen Curry, besides Draymond Green and all the names that you're very familiar with, the fate of the Warriors is going to lie in the hands of some very young individuals. Jonathan Kuminga, Brandin Podziemski, Trayce Jackson Davis. Who knows if Moses Moody is going to be a part of it, but he might be. And if he is, he's going to be important as well. And I figure, why not bring someone who actually knows the game of basketball on this program to discuss those four, what their impact is going to be. Can they actually carry the load? Can they handle the responsibility? Sophia Jones, former point guard for the San Jose State Spartans. That's a D1 program, folks. She's joining me next. We're going to talk about those youngsters. We're going to talk about the WNBA finally getting some estrogen on this program. Desperately needed. It has been far too one-sided. We'll talk about everything that is relevant in today's world. Let's get into it. This is the Golden Days.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win. It was a pretty crazy night.
Let's go. In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Come on and break me off. 'Cause I get what I want and I like what I see. If you got
This is the part where you're pumped up, folks. We got Sophia Jones in the house. Welcome to the Golden Days. This is Doubleheader Tuesday, where Sophia Jones is the first of two guests. Later this afternoon at 3:30 p.m., I'm going to bring on the program Trayce, a documentarian, among many things. He produced an awesome Stephen Curry documentary that's available now on YouTube. But right now, for the first part of our doubleheader, Sophia Jones is going to join us in just a moment after I give some love to the official sponsor of the Golden Days, and that's Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Football's back, folks. From the preseason NFL action to college football kicking off, Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Do you think you know your stuff? Get in on the winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor Pool for the upcoming season. And when the game's over, head on over to the online casino. Pour yourself a stiff one, light them up if you got them, and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or maybe you want to unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use the promo code BELIEVE. That's the name of the program. BLEAV is how you spell it, and get in on the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. And now we welcome the star of the hour, Sophia Jones. I have no idea what you want people to follow you at with social media. Sophia, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Great to see you. How the hell are you doing? How's your summer going? Congrats on graduating college, and let people know how people can find you on social media. But first off, on top of that, how are you doing, kid? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. I've just been decompressing a little bit after graduating and completing my 4-year playing career at San Jose State. And I had an internship at the NBA Summer League, as well as I did sideline reporting for the California Classic.
Nice.
So that was a whirlwind in itself, but I'm excited just now to be looking onto this next chapter of my life.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see all the big things that are coming for you. You have talent, miss, and I'm just really elated to have you on this show. How can people follow you on social media before we continue on? Or are you at a point in life where you don't even need social media? What's your stance on that right now? Where are you at?
I mainly use Twitter and Instagram. So Twitter is Sophia Jones _2. And then Instagram is Sophia Jones with 3 S's at the end and then 2.
Love it. There you go.
Yeah.
That's how you can follow Sophia Jones on social media. You can follow me over on Threads and Instagram at Dog Wild. You can also follow me on that excuse for a social media platform, the cesspool known as Twitter, at Surf Journalist. Sophia, the Warriors are in a point in their existence right now where we don't know what's going to happen this coming season. What we do know is the Western Conference is stacked. There's a lot of good teams. The Warriors try to pull off 2 major trades this offseason, if the reports are correct. And the Paul George one seems to be, we can state that as fact. Even Joe Lacob has admitted that they swung and missed on that one. Unfortunate, but it's the reality of things. And then Lauri Markkanen was, I think, a little more of a stretch, but the Warriors did try to get him. That failed as well. So the Warriors currently, as constructed, are a team with 9, maybe 10 wings, a few bigs sprinkled in there. I guess first things first, before we talk about the youngsters who are the focus of the show today, Sophia, if you take a look at this roster right now, would that fly in the college game? Like if San Jose State put together a roster like that, where Sophia, you were a point guard, for example, like what if you were on a team that had like 9 or 10 guards and just a sprinkle of bigs thrown in there for good measure? Like, would that work in the college game? And what are your thoughts on the current Warriors roster as constructed?
In regards to if it would work in the college game, I feel like if you just have enough talent, you can honestly be able to make it by. How that translates into the NBA, where I have the biggest concern, would be inside. I feel like you look at the centers nowadays between Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis, and just those big inside presences, and the Warriors haven't really been able to have anyone to match that recently and contain that. So that would be the biggest kind of weakness within their roster that I see going for this NBA season. Agreed.
And it is kind of crazy to me. And a lot of people have agreed with the sentiment that this roster, the way it's constructed, it looks like it's set up for a trade that has yet to come. Given how top heavy it is with guards and wings, given the fact that right now they don't even know how they're going to add Quentin Post to this roster, given they're only about $500,000 below the salary cap, and the veteran minimum, or not the veteran minimum, the rookie minimum for Quentin Post is close to $2 million. So they can't even sign him right now. All 3 of their 2-way roster spots are filled. So the only way theoretically they could actually add their lone draft pick would be to either replace one of the 2-way players with him, or just put him on the G League roster, and then he just has no spot in the NBA, which is kind of a waste at that point if that's the plan. But regardless, they do have 4 youngsters that are going to be pivotal for this upcoming season. And those 4 youngsters are Jonathan Kuminga, who's entering year 4, Brandin Podziemski, who's entering year 2, Trayce Jackson-Davis, who's also entering year 2, and Moses Moody, who's entering year 4. Let's start with Jonathan Kuminga. He trains regularly in Florida. You've seen, if I'm not mistaken, I think you told me you've been around him during the summer when he trains out there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what is your initial assessment of Jonathan Kuminga, given where he's at entering year 4? We saw him have a bit of a breakthrough season last year. He finally had an opportunity to play real minutes. He averaged 26.4 minutes per game last year, averaged 16.1 points per game, averaged 4.8 rebounds per game. That number was a very positive jump, given how badly they need his size inside, and they need him to crash the boards. But what is your initial analysis? And break it down as detailed as you want on Jonathan Kuminga. What are you expecting from him? What are your thoughts on him?
I know that I haven't seen him do individual training sessions, but I know that he's been participating in a lot of the runs that are hosted by the trainer that I used to work out with as well, Stan Remy. And it's one of the same stories. I feel like every summer we see that rollout of summer highlights of Jonathan Kuminga in the gym, but so far he's been able to account for that work that he's put in. He's improved like last season, he improves greatly. So I would like to see him take another step this year, especially with the departure of Klay Thompson. There's that extra scoring and leadership also is another one of his skills that hasn't been tested yet, as well as his defense and just being an all-around player and being able to affect the game in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the defense, because last year he was routinely given the most difficult defensive assignment. It's usually him or Andrew Wiggins being tasked with guarding the opposing team's best player. And I thought he handled himself spectacularly. There were some people out there criticizing his defense. I don't understand the criticism. I think he's doing fine. If there's one specific critique I've heard out there, and again, I don't agree with it, but more than one person has said it, is his team defense sometimes struggles, meaning like he doesn't make switches as timely as he should. Maybe he doesn't guard the off-ball defender as tightly as he should. Again, I'm not agreeing with that. I think he's doing fine. On a previous show, I brought up all the individual defensive matchup numbers, which to me is the most accurate representation of assessing a defensive player from measurables, meaning from statistics. And Kaminga, I think, was like 4th or 5th on the team in terms of matchup numbers, meaning the player he defended, their field goal percentage was not great. Players were not just lighting him up in terms of scoring. What's your take on that level of criticism in terms of his off the ball defense? Have you seen any of that yourself? Do you think it's hogwash? What are your thoughts?
In terms of off-ball defense, that is something also that comes with getting used to the pace of the game. With him being a more mature player, I expect a lot more things to start slowing down for him. So you're able to know where the ball and your man is at all time. You're able to kind of be in that gap a little bit more and have your head on the swivel. So I feel like that's just something, and a lot of film as well, which he can go over with his coaches. So I feel like that's something that is easily being able to work upon. What defense at its core is just heart and effort, which for those one-on-one matchups on ball, he already has. So it just needs to translate a little bit into off ball.
Absolutely. I love this kid. I'm so excited to see what year 4 is going to bring out of him. You brought up how routinely each summer he posts a lot of his workout videos. One thing I noticed different between the previous, let's say, 2 summers and this one, when it comes to those workout videos, because in case people forget, Jonathan Kuminga's first offseason after year 1 was celebrating a championship, right? He was a part of that team. He was starting games in that postseason run. It wasn't like he was just a bystander, and he probably did some celebrating as well. But this offseason, what I've noticed in terms of the workout videos that's different is, unlike past ones where you saw a lot of clips of him mostly just shooting, mostly doing like highlight reel type stuff with dunks and the flashy things. This offseason, I'm seeing, first of all, way more clips. I feel like all he's doing is just working out. I know he had one little break to go to like a fashion show or something like that, but that was a very brief respite. Otherwise, it's just been working out. And the workout videos are specific skill sets that I haven't seen before. Like he's working on dribbling. He's working on shot making with taller defenders. Like you see the broom. I never saw that used with his workout videos before, right? Well, are you noticing the same thing? Like, what are you seeing with the workout videos that maybe are different or maybe that sticks out for you?
I have been seeing those same things, and I think that is something that will be really good for him to work on, because there's one thing I did notice about him offensively last season is that he's very quick and very athletic, and he can get into the paint so easily. It's just when he's there in terms of his decision making and being able to make his decision making very fast is something that needs to come along. And those types of drills where you're getting into the paint and you're working on that floater over a taller defender, or you're just working into getting to the paint and passing, it's just about that quick decision in general. So I feel like that's a positive because he's recognizing what he does need to work on.
Absolutely. And I'm super excited to see what's to come. If there's one thing that really sticks out to me in terms of Kaminga's workout videos this offseason are the ball handling workouts. And that's another criticism that I've seen of his that I don't agree with. Like there are people out there who claim that his ball handling is not great. Agree to disagree for any of you out there who believe that. What I'm seeing in terms of his ball handling, and he's mentioned before that the player he looked up to growing up, and I think he still does, is Kobe Bryant, right? And that's been one issue of consternation, of difference between him and Steve Kerr back when there was that disagreement where Kaminga publicly criticized Kerr for the lack of playing time, where Kaminga wants to be like Kobe and Kerr supposedly wants him to be more like Sean Marion. And that's, to me, that's ridiculous, but whatever, that's a side note. The ball handling to me resembles a lot of the style of ball handling that we saw with Kobe, that we saw with a Michael Jordan type, right? Like where it might not be the flashiest ball handling, like you might not see the lightning quick crossovers and those kinds of things, but he's competent. and he does what needs to be done. You are a point guard. What are your thoughts on Kaminga's ball handling? Do you see weaknesses there, or are you seeing what I'm seeing, which is he's fine? He just may not be a point guard, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on his ball handling?
I always think that everyone could always work on ball handling. And I feel like one of the things that I saw him working on is not necessarily ball handling, but ball control. Where sometimes if you're just dribbling the ball, like really pounding and not, like you said, not doing that much of the flashy or anything, not the highlight stuff, but just really breaking it down to its core and ball control, I feel like that is really what is most beneficial on the court, because you're not dribbling the ball in between your legs and behind the back like 50 times a play. Well, you just need to know how to dribble and have enough control to the point that you're not creating turnovers, basically.
Absolutely. And the turnovers, again, it wasn't anything that stuck out for him last year. He averaged 1.6 turnovers per game, not an alarming number at all. And he averaged 26.4 minutes per game. Before we move on from Kaminga, and you've been providing great insights, thank you. And for anyone wondering, again, Sophia, you played D1 basketball at San Jose State. You do know hoops as well as anyone. So I tremendously respect your opinion here. Jonathan Kuminga last year was 7th on the team in minutes. Do you hope that goes up? What are your thoughts on the fact that in year 3, Steve Kerr's still not entirely letting loose of the ropes? Like, do you see something? Do you see that him finally being let loose this year? Do you think it's going to be more of the same where Kerr has this mistrust? What are your thoughts on the minute distribution to wrap up the Kaminga discussion?
For this year, I would hope that Steve Kerr does decide to be a little bit more lenient towards giving more minutes to some of these younger players. With Kaminga, like I mentioned before, he took such a large step last year, and hopefully he can take another one, especially because the Warriors are going to need someone to pick up some of that load from the departure of Klay Thompson at the bottom line.
Absolutely. And I really hope he gets more minutes. Damian LaRoche in the chat, one of our a golden dazer. And again, that's one of the membership groups that's available on YouTube now. Damian, thank you so much for your contributions as always, and your support and your love. Damian writes, Kaminga needs to be top 3 in minutes. And if not, it's time to get our pitchforks and mount a charge at Steve Kerr's house. Did you watch? I'm not big on politics, especially not discussing it on this program. But Steve Kerr was a speaker. Started a pivot here for just 1 second, but Damian brought up Steve Kerr, and he was speaking at the Democratic convention last night. I was not expecting that. Did you watch that, Sophia? Any thoughts on Steve Kerr dipping his foot into the politics pool?
I feel like this is definitely going to show maybe my age a little bit, but I was actually not watching the convention. I was watching the Love Island USA reunion episode. I don't know if you're familiar with Love Island, but that's what I was doing.
I am familiar. No, I don't blame you. I mean, it's these conventions are all just pomp, and so I do not blame you. Damian LaRoche saying that Steve Kerr dropped a night to wrap up his speech, and that it was cringe. I didn't watch it either. I heard about it. My mom was texting me like, Steve Kerr's on the TV giving a speech. I was like, what? But for folks who are unfamiliar, I think the main reason why Steve Kerr is even delving into these pools is because his father started to make this a somber, to pull a somber note here for a second, but his father was murdered, I believe in Beirut. He was a professor or teacher out there, and it was just a really tragic, sad situation where I believe it, I don't know if you could label the person a terrorist, but he got shot, I believe, in the head. And ever since then, Steve Kerr has had a very emotional connection to gun violence. And I think that's the crux of his political leanings is he wants gun control largely because he's been directly affected by it. And he only sees one political party doing anything about it. And so I'm guessing that's at least part of what's going on there. And Damian, by the way, is adding that another Love Island fan. No, that is a very entertaining show, Sophia. No one is judging you for that. I don't even know if that's an age thing, in all honesty. I think it's just the world is hard enough as is. Why not be entertained and get a good escape from that? And Love Island is absolutely entertaining, no doubt there.
Might as well. Might as well.
All right, so shifting gears in terms of the Warriors youngsters. And I'm going to go in order. Actually, there's no particular order here. I'm just going to go in order of who I've pulled up. And the next one up is Brandin Podziemski. This is someone who surprised some people being drafted where he was. Initially, I don't think he was even on draft boards for being selected in the first round. Side note, shameless plug of the program, either this Friday or early next week, Kristen Peak is going to join the program. She is someone whose opinion when it comes to the draft, I value above everyone else. Like when it comes to mock draft, when it comes to draft analysis, like she is she's the pendulum. Like she is there's no one better in my humble opinion. So she's going to come on the program next week to give us some additional insights on these youngsters and the draft picks. Quentin Post, I'm very curious to pick her brain on. But anyway, so Brandin Podziemski, again, surprised some people when he was drafted where he was picked. And I think he was pick number 19. That was the Warriors draft pick. She shot 43.8% from deep his second year in college at Santa Clara. That was like his first full season as a player. And that's really where, he drew notice. And he also averaged over 8 rebounds per game. His rookie year with the Warriors, he's first team all rookie. I think everyone was pleasantly surprised and satisfied with his performance. What was your initial feedback, Sophia, on Brandin Podziemski's rookie campaign?
For his rookie season, the way I would best describe it is just very all around. I believe he was one of the top charge takers in the league. He was number one. He was never afraid to put his body on the line, get on the floor. He did all those little things that the Warriors really did need. And he also did take some of the ball handling load off of Steph whenever he did need a break as well. And overall, he was just a very solid player. I actually was able to watch him when I was in Las Vegas for Summer League this year as well. And you could see the separation between where he was and some of the other rookies that were there. He was just playing with a lot more comfortability and confidence that I really think will help to translate into this next season.
I hope so too. And it was an absolutely fantastic rookie campaign for Brandin Podziemski. Just to remind people his stats, he averaged the average points per game were not super high. It was 9.2 points per game, but as you mentioned, Sophia, it was the all-around package. He did everything. He averaged 1.2 turnovers per game, which is a great clip considering he averaged 26.6 minutes per game. He shot 45.4% from the field, which for a guard it's good. It's not great, but it's good. He shot 38.5% from deep. Good, not great, but it's also worth noting. And that's actually really good. It's not great, but it's really good. I saved the superlatives for 40% and higher if you're going to get a lot of praise as your three-point shooting. But what he did spectacularly, as I mentioned repeatedly on this show, in April, he shot 58.8% from deep. He shot 43.8% from deep his second year at Santa Clara. My guess is this Warriors team is going to be counting on his outside shooting improving considerably in year 2. You mentioned Summer League, right, where they shut him down after a game or two because there was no point, right? Like he was too good for the competition. Why risk injury? There was nothing to gain continuing to have him play out there. In terms of his shooting, do you see what I'm guessing the Warriors are seeing? Like I love the flick of the wrist. To me, that's always a beautiful little facet as a shooter. If you've got that flick, that's a little bonus. I see that in him. I like the form. What are your thoughts on Brandin Podziemski, the shooter?
I am open and I like the idea. Like you mentioned, he did that during college, so he's used to taking some of that scoring load. And even on this Summer League roster, he did a lot of that. I think I was even able to watch him get a triple-double one game. So he's used to doing a lot. So it would be interesting to see how he can take that and from carrying the majority of the load to, I wouldn't say necessarily taking a back seat, or just producing where he can.
Absolutely. And Damien LaRoche in the chat. Again, if you drop ducats on a chat post, you will be highlighted. Damien's writing, did you hear his interview on 95.7, the Warriors flagship radio station? He had me convinced. I did not. Sophia, did you? I missed that, but now you got me interested to hear what he had to say. And Damien, if you don't mind following up on that post, write in a few sentences what stuck out to you that had you convinced. One thing with Brandin, and this is a sore spot for me, I always hated when coaches played me out of position, right? I don't know how you feel about that. I really, and especially if the assignment was, Sai, go play down low, go grab rebounds. I was never one of the taller players in college, so I never understood when coaches asked me to do that. And I don't know how you feel about it, but Brandin Podziemski has said publicly that he is a natural point guard. You mentioned the ball handling, how he relieved some pressure from that front with Stephen Curry by being able to handle the ball. But sometimes you see him playing the 2, sometimes you see him playing the 3. My worry with him playing out of position is much more on the defensive side for obvious reasons. What are your thoughts on coaches asking players to play out of position? Like Brandin Podziemski, like a lot of players on the Warriors roster are routinely asked of by Steve Kerr. What are your thoughts on that?
For players playing out of position, for me, I'm all of 5'6", so I didn't have too many options where I was going on the court anyway. It was either 1 or 2. But for some of the other players, I feel like sometimes coaches, they see size and not necessarily skill set, and where best to use that skill set. They see more about where that size should go. And because Podziemski is a little bit of a bigger point guard, I feel like Steve Kerr falls into that a little bit. But because his natural skill set is a point guard, you talk about the scoring load. And if you're a point guard majority of the time, traditionally, the point guard isn't the one doing the majority of the scoring. But as I was able to see in Summer League, his passing ability is something that has improved as well. So his ability to be able to facilitate is something that could be a focal point in that offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of us are looking forward to that. Your opinion, Sophia, real fast. And this is all you can provide as an opinion, but it's a good talking point. It seems like the Warriors value Brandin Podziemski the same way they did Klay Thompson 10 plus years ago when they were presented with a Kevin Love trade that they shot down. There were multiple reports out there that said that what held up ultimately a trade to acquire Lauri Markkanen was Brandin Podziemski. The Warriors did not want to give him up. That's who the Utah Jazz did want as part of the trade package. Would you have included Brandin Podziemski in a trade for Lauri Markkanen, or do you think the Warriors were smart to hold on to him?
That's a good question. I feel like if you look at the landscape of the Western Conference right now, it is so competitive that, and all the other teams pretty much around the Warriors seem to have gotten better. And the Warriors, with the loss of Klay Thompson, potentially got a little worse. So it's just an outlook where if they're trying to look more towards the future and they're like, you know what, the West is too competitive right now. Let's just try to build something so that in a couple years, maybe we can make a run. And you see Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, kind of that core. And you need a win now with them because they are, I wouldn't say the back end of the career, but they are older players. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of preference on what you would want to do. Especially personally, after watching Steph Curry during the Olympics, I would love to see him go and get another ring and just play on a good team for as long as possible.
Me too.
So me personally, I would go for a win now mentality.
I'm totally with you. And I do think the Warriors are feeling some pressure, especially after that Olympics, to do something. The question is what, right? And Damien LaRoche followed up in the chat regarding what Brandin Podziemski said in that interview that instilled so much confidence in him. Damien writes, quote, his tone and demeanor and assessment of his own game progression this summer sounded like it was based on reality. Most young players have an overinflated sense of self, but the tone of his confidence gave me goosebumps. So I think what Damian, to summarize, is saying here is that Brandin Podziemski expressed self-awareness, which to me, at least, is a huge sign of maturity. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. So I could understand why you feel excited about that. Let's move on. Any last thoughts on Brandin Podziemski, by the way? Like, what do you expect in year two? Do you feel like he could be someone who averages a lot of points, like 15, 20 a game? Again, he averaged 9.2 last year. His rebounding, again, for a guard who's 6'4", very impressive. In just his rookie campaign, he averaged 5.8 rebounds, also averaged 3.7 assists. That's a number I feel like could go up a little more, given he is a point guard. What are you expecting in year two as we wrap up the Brandin Podziemski part of the show?
I would like to see him make that little bit of a scoring jump, especially since the Warriors are going to need it. If he does happen to get taken out of his point guard role a little bit to be able to create more off ball, then I can see something in the Warriors offense where Draymond does a lot of point forward play. And that way he's able to not have as much of the ball handling load and get his own shots.
And I'm glad you brought up Draymond. I don't know if you've noticed this. I feel like I'm the only person in the whole media sphere that's brought this up. Larry Kruger, who regularly comes on with me, also brought this up too. I feel like Draymond's usage rate has gone down. Like, Draymond used to be the de facto point guard for this team, and for some reason, the last 2 years, I've noticed this steady decline. And I got to look up the usage rates numbers to see if the measurables confirm this. But I've noticed a steady decline in him bringing the ball up and him facilitating the offense. I'm seeing him set up in the post a lot more, which he didn't used to do. Have you noticed the same thing as well? Or is that just me? Like, and if you haven't noticed it, it's totally fine. Because again, I feel like I'm one of the only people who's seen that. But have you seen that as well? Or am I just crazy? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that real fast?
I definitely do think I've seen a decrease in not only bringing the ball up the court, but pushing pace.
Yes.
In bringing the ball up the court. When he would just get the board and everyone get out and go, I felt like that was always when the Warriors were strongest. And I do feel like I have seen a decrease in that recently.
I wonder why. Like what are, like, the Warriors, of all the moves they made this offseason, I feel like the most positive move was the improvements on the coaching staff, where they brought a former longtime NBA head coach, Trayce, in as the number one assistant. And they brought Jerry Stackhouse, former great player, who's reportedly going to be helping a lot with the defensive side of things. He's also a former player on the staff, which the Warriors don't have a lot of. I thought those moves were fantastic. As a recently, I don't know if retired is the right word for you, Sophia, but as a former D1 player who's no longer playing the college game, but again, you played a long time, you're familiar with it. What any thoughts on the impact of these changes on the coaching staff? Like what are your thoughts on those revisions?
Like you said, I'm a fan of them. I feel like with the departure of Mike Brown, because he was more so their defensive mind, you saw that little bit of that decrease. And I would like to see that get back to where it was, because I think some people tend to forget that at one point the Warriors really did have the best defense in the league. And so I feel like they're entirely capable to get back to that point.
I hope so. You're right. Their identity, everyone focuses on the offense, but that defense was always number one or right up there in every one of their successful seasons. So I'm totally with you there. Sophia, do you mind if we bring a viewer, a Golden Dazer on the program?
No, I don't mind.
All right. Steve White, he asked, and we delivered. Welcome to the program. Let me organize this so it's a little more, so we can all see you. I'm going to put you as the headliner. Steve.
Oh, no. Hey,
yours, sir. How you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. I've been listening to you for the longest time. I love your show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Now, the only thing that I've just been really bothering me this whole offseason is how everyone was saying, oh, Lowry marketing, they need to get another big star. Back in 2022, at the beginning of the season, everyone was saying pretty much the same thing. Oh, Otto Porter, who is that? Belly, who is that? And during the preseason, they ended up going 5-0, really good chemistry. Jordan Poole was probably the X factor. Remember, they didn't even have Klay Thompson until December. And if you look at this team, how it's constructed, they're probably not the same parts, but you can compare pretty much slow-mo to Otto Porter. Belly would be more like the young guard or the young center that they drafted. And then you have more perimeter defense with Melton. So I think that they're going to be actually a lot better than everybody thinks. And I think that second or that third star that they're looking for is pretty much on the roster. I'm with you, and I've been with you the whole time. How do we know what we have if they don't play these young guys? Podziemski is okay. He can't keep anybody in front of him, and I'd like to see him shoot the three at a little bit better of a clip. But they have this guy on the bench. I'm trying to think. Moses Moody. They need to play him. I don't know why they haven't been playing him. I think with the lineup of maybe him, Podziemski, coming off that bench, along with Melton or maybe Buddy Hield playing the de facto role of Jordan Poole, they pretty much have the same team with a better defense than the 2022 team that went the whole way. Again, the X factor in 2022 is the same X factor in 2024. Which Andrew Wiggins are we going to see? I'm with you also, Cy. I think he can definitely play the 2 and have Kaminga playing the 3 with Draymond playing the 4 and having Trayce Jackson-Davis manning the center. And then when they add that depth lineup, maybe sliding everyone down a bit and then putting a bigger guard in there like a Moses Moody with Steph Curry to create a new depth lineup. I don't know about you guys, but I think that would work and probably would serve them well. Yeah, the West has gotten stronger, but really, how much stronger did they get? A couple of players maybe taking the next step on their teams, but I mean, Denver proved to be really vulnerable. Yeah, we lost to them 4 times, but by a total of 10 points? I wouldn't call that too much better than the Warriors. Minnesota, if Steve Kerr would put in the right combinations in the fourth quarter, they probably would have won 2 out of those 4 games. So I don't really see the West being as much better than the Warriors as everybody is saying. I think they're just panicking because, the loss of Klay. But, in the Sacramento game, I think that kind of showed us that maybe it was time to move on from Klay. I love Klay Thompson. I have, I'm painting my house now, so I don't have my posters all up, but in my signed jersey. I think he's a great player. I think he's going to do good for Dallas. But you can tell they didn't have that same joy. When something happens, the bench would erupt, and you didn't see that for the last 2 years. And I think that they're going to get back to that hopefully this year.
Hey, Steve, so in I don't know if you were watching me back in 2021. The summer of 2021, and I don't mean to brag, but it's part of my credibility. It's part of me establishing myself on the scene. Myself and Stephen A. Smith were the only ones in that summer, and I give Stephen A. credit for that, man, because he was the only other person who was publicly, repeatedly saying with confidence, not like I think, maybe. No, I was guaranteeing the Warriors were going to win the title that year for the exact reasons you mentioned, right? You forgot to bring up, Andre Iguodala. He was actually playing the first half of that season, heavy minutes, and he was contributing. And he got hurt the second half, so he started to fade out. Like, he got hurt almost right when Klay Thompson came back, so they kind of supplanted each other, even though they play completely different skill sets. You brought up as well the difference between that and now, at least to me. Is the Andre Iguodala part. I don't know who replaced him, because he handled the ball, right? Like, he was a grossly underrated part of that team where he could play a point guard role, wasn't a good shooter, but he could defend 1 through 5. You brought up Otto Porter Jr. being a vital part, and maybe slow-mo Kyle Anderson does replace him. But where you and I think are differing a little bit, and what I see differently between now and 2021, and Sophia, I'd love your take on this as well. And you mentioned the landscape, but the landscape in 2021 did not have a Houston Rockets team who's on the verge of comeuppance. The Memphis Grizzlies in 2021 were one of the main rivals of the Warriors, and they haven't been around much the last 2 years. They might make a comeback this year. Wemby did not exist. I really worry about the Spurs, man. Like, the Spurs could immediately be a playoff team. The OKC Thunder did not exist. Now they're possibly the best team in the West. Minnesota has that massive front line. You're right about Denver not being as good, but I still don't know how the Warriors are going to, get a grasp on Jokic, who's still the best player in the game. My point is, I'm not making predictions, man. Maybe you're right. Maybe the Warriors will surprise a lot of people this year. To me, it comes down to these youngsters, and it's going to come down to Steve Kerr having some trust in these youngsters. He's had trust issues with these youngsters the last 2 years, man. Like Kaminga should not have been 7th on the team in minutes last year. Moses Moody should not be getting DNPs after playing hero ball for a lot of moments last year. So that's my concern, is whether or not these youngsters are going to get a run, or whether Steve Kerr is going to continue having these trust issues with them. Sophia, what would you like to add anything to this? I sorry to shut you. I didn't mean to shut you out there. Go ahead, please.
No, you're good. I feel like sometimes just having all the superstars isn't necessarily the key to win. I feel like you can even take a little bit from the Boston Celtics team that won this year. In terms of superstars, it was mainly Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and everyone else just was a star in their role and knew how to play their role really, really well. So if you can teach a lot of those younger players and some of the other roster and more role players in the Warriors team to be able to just play their roles really well, and then of course you have the star power of Steph Curry, I still think that you can't put anything past the team.
With Steph, absolutely anything could happen. Anything could happen with Steph, man. That I 100% agree with. Steve, no, you brought up some. You're on fire there, man. Like you didn't. I don't think you took a breath for like 3 minutes. Bravo. Any final thoughts, man? I mean, you came in. You were eloquent. You were articulate. You nailed it, sir. Any final thoughts, man?
Yeah, I've been watching you for a long time, and you and I have the same, pretty much opinions about Steve Kerr and the team. I do want to harp on one more thing, though, before I let you guys go.
Please.
He definitely needs to have more trust in Trayce Jackson-Davis. I can't remember who won the player of the year the last 2 years, but Trayce Jackson-Davis came second behind him in his senior year. So the guy can definitely play defense. He's definitely can be a force. And I think when you were saying that they don't have anybody to handle like the Jokic's and the other big players, he plays big for his size. He's almost like a taller version of a Draymond Green with more experience down low. So I think that that's going to not even be an issue for them. I think what their issue is going to be is getting that second guy coming off the bench. And I'm hoping that Buddy Hield can fill that spot. If not, that's when I'm thinking that they're going to be in some trouble and maybe take maybe even a step back from last year's team. But other than that, Si, keep up the great work, man. I'm glad I found you again.
Thank you. I'm glad too, man. And like I said, come on anytime. All right. You were fantastic. And I'm with you too on Trayce Jackson-Davis. That's what I'm going to ask Sophia about next. Dude, he might be the answer. Maybe they don't have an issue there. You might be right. I would like some depth, right? And I just want a little more height, dude. Like to me, like an average, the Warriors are still the shortest team in the NBA. Out of all 30, they are the shortest. And I would like that addressed, but that's me, man. Steve, you rock, dude. Thank you, brother. Anything you want to promote before you go? Anything you got going on, like social media or anything like that?
No, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, so nobody will be able to get me.
Stay cool. Stay cool.
I'm trying. Cool, bye, you guys. Bye, Sophia.
Thank you, man. Thank you. You were awesome. That was phenomenal. Sophia, that's how a rock star does it. But that's about as good as you get. Any thoughts on Steve's comments, Sophia, before you talk about Trayce Jackson-Davis?
Well, with his comment on Trayce Jackson-Davis, he is the Warriors' answer to some of the dominant centers in the league today. And I'm hoping that he can take another step this year in terms of his physicality. He has a good head on his shoulders. Whenever you watch him play, he can recognize the right spots to be in offense and on defense. So I think that when he's faced up against these centers, it will be a matter of if he plays bigger than he actually is.
Totally. And just to give you some numbers for Trayce Jackson-Davis this past year, he got a lot of DNPs early in. Wait, oh, I thought it was muted. He got a lot of DNPs early in the season, which may have cost them a spot on one of those two all-rookie teams, which is unfortunate. Played 68 games, started 16 of them. Averaged 16.6 minutes per game. All those have to go up. And I think he's earned the increase in minutes and games played. There are reports out there that he's working on his three-point shot. I don't know if we should hold our breath for that. But he did lead the Warriors in field goal percentage, averaging 70.2, shooting 70.2% from the field. averaged 5 rebounds per game and only 16.6 minutes per game, and he averaged 7.9 points. So it's not like he's a liability out there offensively. Sophia, how many minutes do you think Trayce Jackson-Davis should get? Like, is he the type of guy who should be getting 30 minutes? Should it just be a gradual increase where from the 16.6 last year, maybe you bring it up to 20, but then I don't know who else you play. What are your thoughts on Trayce Jackson-Davis? Floor is yours, Sophia.
I would like to see him be able to get more minutes. I say 20 is maybe the baseline, and then just start working the way up from there based off of his performance. You also mentioned just depth at that spot, which is why I'm very interested to also see what Quentin Post could be for this team as well. Because I believe he's right around 7 foot, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen him play at all? Or have you just seen it on paper?
I had the chance to watch him in Las Vegas. He was during Summer League. He was coming off of an injury, and I would say the thing that stood out to me the most was that, kind of similar to Trayce Jackson-Davis, he seemed to be a pretty polished player. He would get the ball in the post and then just have his moves that he would go to. But he was also able to stretch the floor. He can shoot the 3 ball, which with a defender maybe like Jokic, when you're dragging him out the paint, that could be potential opener for offense. But it's that depth in the center position that will be interesting to see how it plays out this season.
Absolutely. And he was, like you mentioned, he was injured. I think he played the final Summer League game, right? Was that his one appearance? Maybe he played 2. I can't remember how many games he played. I thought it was only 1. But the one thing that stuck out to me, Sophia, I don't know if you agree with this sentiment or not. And again, this is entirely subjective, just my opinion. Trayce Jackson-Davis looks like a big dude out there. Like other bigs are not pushing him around. He's holding his own. It's only 1 game from Summer League. So, and there's no way that this opinion represents how I feel long-term. But Quentin Post did not look like he didn't look big out there. Like, he didn't look like someone who can dominate the inside. You mentioned the fact that, a huge reason he was drafted in the first place was because he's a 7-footer who can shoot the 3. Do you see him having an inside game, or is he going to be someone who's just a stretch 5 and might get pushed around a little bit inside? What are your thoughts on his physicality?
That's something that, again, because he was coming off an injury during Summer League, it was hard to gauge. But that physicality is definitely something that just getting on a workout and meal plan, especially with the NBA check coming in, can definitely help. But I had the chance to interview Quentin Post when I was at Summer League as well. And so he's actually the first Dutch player drafted since 2009.
Really?
Into the NBA. Yeah.
And
so when he would, but so he's from the Netherlands, and from a young age, he was developing in the youth academy of the professional team called Apollo Amsterdam. So because he was in that professional space for so long, he said that he's used to doing stuff at a high level. So we can see if that can potentially translate over into another professional league with the NBA.
And that also means likely that there isn't a slow learning curve for him, that he could come in and play immediately, right? Is that kind of the gist you got as well?
Yeah, and just being able to be adaptable, I guess you would say.
Totally. I'm very curious to see how they fit him in. And again, this is one of the many reasons why it makes sense that the Warriors have another trade coming, because right now they literally cannot play him without making some sort of move. It is fascinating. And this leads to the final youngster of the day. And Sophia, I'm sorry. I know we're up against the clock here. I don't know what the rest of your day is looking like. We'll finish up very soon, I promise. Moses Moody. Someone who, again, a lot of people are sticking up for him. He publicly has said, when asked about his role as just someone who has to stay ready, his response was,
it sucks.
Yeah, he's not a fan of it. And I personally feel like he's been misused. I feel like the fans feel the same way. He averaged 17.5 minutes per game. 17.5 minutes per game last year. Averaged 8.1 points per game. Shot 36% from deep. That number should go up a little bit, but he's a playmaker. I mean, he's not just a 3-point shooter. He has his athleticism, in my opinion, is underrated. We've seen his explosiveness where he just kind of surges out of nowhere and slams these monster dunks down. Averaged 3 assists per game. I feel bad for this kid. I really want him to play. I don't know if he's going to get a run with the Warriors. What is your assessment and your thoughts on Moses Moody entering year 4?
That is similar to you. That is another player that I would like to see be able to get more minutes and more consistent minutes, especially because, like I had mentioned before, sometimes it's not necessarily about all the talent that you have on a team, but all the pieces that work together. And Moses Moody has the potential to be a type of player that rises up to his role and just shines in it.
Absolutely. And again, he was mentioned in these trade talks with Lauri Markkanen. Given the minutes he gets, given the lack of trust Steve Kerr has shown in him, if you're going to trade him, get something back. And if you're going to keep him, play him. But it's just that he's in this massive logjam at that wing position, right? You're battling for minutes with Podziemski. I mean, no one seems to remember that Gary Payton II is on this roster. They added Lindy Waters. They got DeAnthony Melton. They got Buddy Hield. I don't know how he fits. For someone who's a lottery pick in one of the deepest drafts ever, it is crazy that he just sits there on the bench getting DNPs time and time and again. Any final thoughts on Moses Moody before we shift gears and for the first time on this show, give some real genuine attention to the Valkyries and the WNBA?
Not much more to add on to Moody other than what we both touched upon. When you go based off of what he's done, he's been efficient. He's done the little things. He's done things that when he's on the court, it's not very high risk. And he has shown those tendencies to be able to just slide into that role of just doing the little things. And I feel like if he's able to continue that role and he'll fit onto the roster, if he can continue to fit onto the roster in that role and in that way, then the Warriors team could potentially make a run.
Absolutely. You're right. You're 100% right. And Moses Moody could be the guy that replaces Klay Thompson. I believe that. Not as good, but he's worthy. He belongs. And every time I see him play, like, I don't see bad things happening. Like, I never watch Moses Moody play and think to myself, man, if he wasn't playing, the Warriors would be better. That thought's never crossed my mind once when he's on the court. And I wish him all the best. I hope he gets a run this year if he stays on the team. Sophia, the Golden State Warriors ownership now has an expansion WNBA team, the Valkyries. Great name, by the way, and a regular guest of this program. She deserves all the credit. I do believe that, and I'm going to bring her on the show soon for coming up with that name, because she was promoting it for months before the Warriors announced that would be the name of their new WNBA team. The Golden State Valkyries, I believe they're going to be called. What are your expectations? When do they start playing? First of all, if you don't mind informing me in the audience, is it going to be next season? Is it 2 years from now? And what were your first reactions to the fact that the Bay Area now has a WNBA team?
The Valkyries will begin play next WNBA season, which is really, really exciting when you look at the recent growth of women's basketball in general. And for expectations, there'll be an expansion team. So I'm sure they're still figuring a lot of who they're even hiring as a coach out. But I mean, I feel like if you can base expectations off of what they've done so far, and what they've done so far is come up with a great name, which I personally love. And one of my favorite colorways in sports with the lilac, purple, and black, which I'm a huge fan of. but it'll be really exciting to see. After being in the Bay Area for university and just seeing the amount of passion that Bay Area people have for basketball, I think that there is no area that's more deserving than them to be able to host this new expansion team. And it'll be interesting because the year after the Valkyries, Toronto is actually getting an expansion team as well. So everything is just going into the growth of the WNBA, which is amazing to see.
It really is, and it's crazy. Tell us what in your words, what is the impact of Caitlin Clark's emergence? Because obviously she shouldn't be getting all the credit. This team's been around for a long time, but she has that star quality clearly, and she's bringing a lot of fans, new fans, to the game. Describe in your words the impact of Caitlin Clark and the rivalry she has with Angel Reese, because rivalries, when it comes to narratives, those are important for the growth of sports, right? That's why people get captivated by this stuff. Just in your words, describe this sudden emergence of big stars to the game, its impact. Maybe you don't like it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I would say I definitely do think that Caitlin Clark has played a large role into bringing more people to watching women's basketball as a whole. I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that with some of these younger generation players, and especially with NIL, we're seeing their faces a lot more. So fans end up following them into the WNBA and just getting more attention overall. And she's just a fun player to watch. At the end of the day, she's really fun to watch. And when you look at other players in the WNBA, like Asia Wilson, who's having an insane MVP season so far, is really just also helping to bring attention to some of the women that have been doing it this whole time as well, like Asia Wilson, like Diana Taurasi, who's in her 40s in the league. I feel like everyone talks about LeBron, but Diana Taurasi is over on the other side doing the same thing. And just players like that have curated the WNBA to the point that it is now for a lot of people to just be able to enjoy it now.
Absolutely. Is there anyone in the college game now that you think would I don't know what draft position the Valkyries will have next year. Like, I don't know if they're going to get the number one pick or how that's going to work out. Maybe you can enlighten myself and the audience with that. But is there anyone in the college game that could be at least somewhat close to the level of Caitlin Clark and Angel? This was a phenomenal WNBA draft. There was a lot of talent in there. Who's sticking out to you for next year, if anyone?
For next year, and if the Golden State Valkyries are able to get a top draft pick, would be one of their choices, would be to get Paige Beckers. She plays for the UConn Huskies, and she's, again, very exciting point guard to watch. And as a point guard myself, I can tell when someone's like IQ is just on another level, IQ and playmaking, and Paige, she's on another level.
Damian LaRoche is saying the girl from New York. Do you know who he's referring to?
Yeah, probably Brianna Stewart.
There you go.
Yeah, Stewie, if I'm correct. She's a bucket as well. She was MVP last season, and she's leading the New York Liberty to the best record in the WNBA so far this season. She's another player she'll hit that turnaround jumper, and it's like, oh my gosh, how did she make that?
D57 in the chat is asking, how do they form a team? Meaning, like, the Valkyries don't have a roster. Is there going to be like an expansion draft? Do you have an answer for that?
So there is a little kind of like that, an expansion draft. I was trying to touch up. I was reading the WNBA Players Association agreement to try to get a gauge on what this will look like. And with the expansion draft, they'll be able to draft some new players coming from college, as well as when current WNBA teams make players available, basically, they can try to pick some of those players as well as try to snag some unrestricted free agents, which I think Breanna Stewart is going to be one of those next season. So that might be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Paige. That would be an awesome first player for the Valkyries. And I got to give Janelle Moore, I don't think I mentioned her name, credit. She's the one who came up with that. She's been a regular guest of this show. I got to get her back on too. It's been a while. But yeah, I'm super pumped for it. And expansion drafts are one of the many reasons why I've been advocating for the NBA to expand. The popularity of the game has never been higher. You're seeing all the talent internationally, locally. There are not enough NBA teams, to me. I want to see not just two. I mean, everyone's talking about the NBA likely expanding by two teams. Seattle and Vegas are the most likely cities to get those two new expansion teams. I want 4. I want 6. I think there's a lot of markets out there who would thrive with an NBA team, but it's the expansion part of it that is so fun, because for folks out there who are unfamiliar about the way expansion drafts work, every team in the league is given a number of players they can protect, right? And I don't know if that's like 8 or 10. And then the expansion teams can pluck anyone else off your roster and take them. It's a fascinating process. Anything you want to add to that? I'm looking forward to that part of the Valkyries. Just their expansion draft alone should be fun. Any other thoughts you want to add on to that before as we wrap things up?
Yeah, I just think that at a time where WNBA and women's college basketball ratings continue to break records, the Valkyries are going to be active at one of the most exciting times in the WNBA. And I'm really excited to see what it's going to lead to. Same.
I can't wait. Sophia, thank you so much. You've been on for a very long time. I didn't expect to go a whole hour, but thank you so much. For everyone else, again, one more time, Sophia, mention how people can follow you on social media, and you're going to be on regularly with me. So folks, if you were appreciative and loved Sophia's appearance, that'll be a consistent thing. We might figure out like a weekly same day time type scenario, but we'll figure that out. But for now, promote away. Social media accounts, any ventures you got going on?
I would just say Twitter is Sophia Jones _2, and Instagram is Sophia Jones with 3 S's at the end and 2.
Absolutely. And Damien saying today's show was fire, and that you know your stuff, Sophia. That's one of the many reasons why I bring you on. You definitely know your stuff. Thank you. I think we're good, right? Is there anything else? We touch on all bases today, or are we done, Sophia?
I think we covered everything, yeah.
And then that's it. Have a great day. This show will be back in an hour, 15 minutes. It's doubleheader Tuesdays. I always try to get 2 guests on for the Tuesday editions. And the second one up will be Trayce High. We're going to be talking a lot of Stephen Curry in an hour 15. He produced a fantastic documentary. Until then, Sophia, thank you. And you'll be on regularly with me. I can't thank you enough for the contribution. You're fantastic. Otherwise, have a great day, everyone. And we'll be back at this soon. Bye-bye.